Hey, everybody. Welcome to Chatting with Chi again, a series of recorded conversations exploring personal growth, mental health, and wellness with invited voices who bring both professional insight and lived experience. I'm Chi, and today's focus is going to be on caregivers, specifically the caregiver persona, caregiver burnout, and how we stay compassionate without running ourselves into the ground. Um, I'm joined by two amazing guests. Cynthia McMillan is a lawyer, motivational speaker, and author. She grew up in Chicago and currently lives in the Dallas area in Texas, but we are not going to fault her for that. We're going to just act like nothing happened there. So she is currently a caregiver as well. If you've seen any of our other sessions, you've heard some extremely impactful information from her already. And so I'm really looking forward to see what she adds today. And then she's also just passionate about inspiring others to heal, grow, pursue their purpose, and speak their truth. I'm also joined by Katie Bombard, a licensed clinical professional counselor in Illinois with years of experience working with clients navigating anxiety, mood disorders, personality disorders, and life stressors and transitions. You may have heard me say quite frequently that I do not offer therapy, and that if therapy is needed, please seek out a therapist as well. There is a strong difference between coaches and therapists. And as far as coaches go, which I'm a certified mindset and ICF trained life coach, along with being a business and nonprofit strategist. But in that capacity, our goal is to help you get where you're wanting to go versus Katie, a therapist that's there to help you understand why we're here, why we got here in the first place, and how can we adjust and become better. So both of us have the goals of bettering people. My specific goal is to help women understand their value and follow their vision through that mindset and resilience coaching, and where needed, business and nonprofit consulting. I can tell you right now, if you come to me, I'm going to lead you right over to Katie, should you also require therapy. Just a quick note, too, today's conversation, again, is for education and support, not legal advice. Our goal is just to give you language and insight and practical next steps. So if you're watching, hit subscribe so you don't miss our future sessions. And without any further ado, Cynthia, Katie, thank you both for being here. And we're going to get started with the caregiver persona first. And I'm just going to throw this question out there. Which caregiver traits are strengths at first, but become risk factors later? And I do definitely think it's important to identify that a strength can also work against you eventually, depending. So I want you guys to speak to that.
Absolutely. Um, patience. Patience is a really good one. Patience eventually turns into, micromanagement, resentment, um, and a lot of self-resentment as well. You know, um, uh, as well as empathy. Empathy turns into the exact opposite. It turns into anger and hatred, and we don't want to get to that point. So, um, it turns into self-sacrifice. It turns into resentment.
This is empathy you're talking about specifically on that one.
About empathy, yes.
Tell me, let's talk about that for just a second. How can because we see it happen. I'm clearly aware of it. I should add that I have been caregiving for 8 years across three different individuals. And it definitely has had its effect on me, wear and tear, mentally, emotionally, physically. So I am in this too, not just as coach, but as a person that is dealing with this, as Katie knows. But I think it's curious to, I want to know how can such good qualities, patience and empathy that you brought up, how can they turn so sour into anger and self resentment?
they turn that way through the different stages of caregiver burnout, which I'd be more than happy to talk about. It's kind of a long explanation if you want to.
Okay. Well, we're going to go there then. So that's the key though. So now I know they turn that way through caregiver burnout, which we're going to cover right after this. Cynthia, did you want to add anything to this question?
Yes, I think a big one for me that I noticed was being a perfectionist, trying to do everything right, trying to make sure that you did it better than anybody else, and all of that. And that will eventually get to you because nobody's perfect, and the whole object is just to get it done, not to, you know,
Mhm.
like my mother-in-law gave her a bath today. I just put on essentials, washed her down, put on some lotion, little deodorant under her arms, lotion on her legs, and no perfume, no none of that. It's just not a perfectionist thing. You don't have to be perfect, but it will wear on you because you're trying to do that for either yourself, possibly, or for the family, possibly, to show them that you're doing everything right. That's a whole
Okay. That's
nother
a whole
bleed. That's a
that's in
whole
there.
nother thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
in there.
definitely in there.
But I think eventually you're going to become even more upset and angry and feeling, maybe even let yourself down, maybe, and that's just a small part of it because there is no perfectionism. The thing is to just be there with a calm mind and a calm spirit and just take care of whatever the task is.
I thank you both. We talked about empathy and patience, and we're about to, get deeper on that caregiver burnout that causes that to turn on, from great habits or great qualities to now you're in trouble. And then, like you brought up, Cynthia, the perfectionism, I think that was really great too. And I'm going to add one more. People who need to feel needed, people whose identity is wrapped up in being needed, and then that goes south,
Yes.
because you may somewhere inside, for whatever reason, I'm sure Katie can knows best, but somewhere inside you have maybe like either a self-conscious issue about that your value, or you have a hero complex, probably one or the other, but those both can lead you to having to always feel like people need you, and so now you get wrapped up in there. um, so Cynthia, as an attorney, author and speaker, how do high standards, which I think you kind of bumped into with the perfectionism, and also advocacy and just being the strong one, how does that shape your caregiver persona? Or do you think we kind of covered that with perfectionism? You tell me if there's a blend of that.
I think I can find a fine line between them both. And for me personally, being the strong one now that both of my parents are deceased, so me and my sister take on the roles of being the matriarch and patriarch of both of our individual families, and it will beat you down because you're putting so much on yourself, but you're putting it on yourself. Nobody's putting it on you, but you're putting it on yourself because you feel like you owe it to your parent. I'm just saying a parent who's deceased, to carry the load. And I find myself doing that a lot. I find myself trying to carry that load, trying to carry my mother-in-law's load because nobody else will. That's a whole nother topic. And I'm just trying to
Yes, it
do it
is.
all. But it's a fine line because that's not my mother, that's my mother-in-law. So I have to be very careful where I step. You know what I'm saying? So it's yeah, I've had to step back and speak my truth out loud and make it known that I can't do it all. And that's hard to admit sometimes, especially when you're that person, saying I cannot do it is hard because you feel like a failure, but actually it's a strength. It's a strength to say out loud, I can't do it.
Well, when you were on here last, You brought up something. So I'm just going to pin that right there. You already know what I'm talking about because it went viral, where for me anyway. I think you had like 600 views or something on what you said.
Wow.
But
Okay.
yes, so what we're going to lead into is we're going to kind of carry it on over to the caregiver burnout. Um, and what makes it different, and I really want Katie to speak to this first. What makes it different from just, I'm tired? What is different between I'm tired and I'm legitimately burnout? And is it a thing? Like, what is this thing, caregiver burnout?
There's 4 stages to caregiver burnout, and it kind of covers an awful lot. It covers where boundaries and yourself start to erode. It covers where you go from you're no longer just tired, but you're burning out. And all of the stages provide signs where people ignore themselves physically, emotionally, and socially. Right. So, you start tipping into this caregiver mode from the very start. So there's 4 stages. There's warning, where there's a lot of red flags. There's control, there's survival, and there's burnout. And that's where you're full blown out or blown out, burned out. Sorry, I had to blow out. Isn't it so pretty?
Well, here.
But in the warning stage, this is where our boundaries really erode and our persona starts to switch over to that caretaker mode or
Okay.
caregiver persona. Sorry. Um, we start full of energy, right? We have the best intentions and we have the biggest heart. We really want to just help our loved one or the person that we're caregiving for. And we have optimism and desire to provide the most excellent care. But then we begin to physically and emotionally feel drained after providing caregiver tasks because it starts to drain us after a period of time. And we start to feel frustration over everyday tasks, and challenges. And we start to lose interest in our hobbies and our social activities. And so therein lies where physically, emotionally, and socially we're ignoring ourselves.
Yep. Or so the neglect, and I definitely have personally I'm been in those shoes. I've understood it quite well, unfortunately. I often say that I lost 5 years of time. I gained it by having the time to honor my parents and caregive for them, but I also lost a lot of me and a lot of my physical health. In those 5 years, I totally n- neglected self. Didn't even realize it until it was over. And then I thought, wait, what happened to me? Why am I so sick? Why do I have so many new issues? I didn't see them the whole time, you know, through
You
it.
don't. You don't.
Um, so what are the early warning signs that people ignore? Like, how could I have known that this was happening to me back then?
Recognizing that you're feeling emotionally drained, right? Recognizing that you are avoiding social events, recognizing that you are starting to give yourself up. You are no longer yourself. You are turning into just the caregiver. And that really starts to show in the second stage of caregiver burnout. And that's the control stage. And these are where there's a lot of red flags. And this is where your boundaries completely erode and you totally lose your sense of self. So listen for the red flags, right? You have the urge to micromanage. You just completely take control because that's how you control it. That's how you have to manage things to make sure that everything's going to be okay. So when you start to micromanage, wow, that's a huge red flag. You feel overwhelmed and you try to compensate by excusing that heightened control over these tasks, right? So, um, anxiety that you're not doing enough, you start to feel anxious. You need to recognize that as a red flag. And you start to feel resentment towards the situation
Mm,
and the person themselves.
yeah, yeah.
So, that that's a huge one. And finally, these unhealthy micromanaging tendencies arise and they backfire, causing more frustration. So when you feel anxious, you feel frustration, you feel resentment, and you start to micromanage and you find yourself, having to control everything, those are the big red flags. And that's the control stage where you are flipping into caregiver burnout and
Hmm.
losing yourself.
I totally can see that. And I want you, Cynthia, to speak to this. I mean, you know, one of the things that we know with caregiver burnout, and Katie said it, and I know you and I both had a little nod when she said it, because you spoke to it so beautifully in the first our last session, and that is establishing boundaries, not the
Yes.
lack of boundaries. And and
Yes.
and I think even as Katie was saying it, she was just saying, like, in general, the lack of boundaries, but you had never been an actual solo caregiver before, and you walked into it establishing boundaries. It was remarkable. Like, we all should have been like, because who does that? You just knew to do it.
Well, mine was not your traditional caregiving phase, if you will. My becoming a caregiver was, it followed losing both of my parents. My father in August of 20, my mother, no, I'm sorry, August of 19, my mother in March of 20, my sister in law in September of 20. And then my husband asking if he could relocate his mother from Indiana to our home. I was not, again, I was not on board. I didn't have a chance to grieve my own parents. I was trying to, I mean, literally the rug was pulled from up under me and I was upside down trying to figure out which way to go. But, and to add to that guilt, I never had a chance to bring my mother home to take care of her. Now, my sister was taking care of our dad in Chicago, so we both had one parent. And my father we knew he was dying. He had cancer. We knew that. But when he died on the 20th, and my mother here in Texas went into cardiac arrest on August 30th, that was not part of the plan. So things just changed very quickly. And my whole superwoman syndrome just went straight down the toilet because there was no, I'm trying to survive at this point, literally trying not to lose it, although I've lost it several times because I just had to release somewhere. And I remember going to my doctor and just for a medicine check. And she came in, and usually it's like, hey, how are you? So she came in and she went, hey, and I went, I just start bawling. She's like, okay, I want you to lay down. I'm going to turn off the light and I'll be back, because she's never seen me like that. I just lost it. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know. I was trying to hold it together, but I lost it. So because of how mine came into play, although I did not want to do this, I knew my mother would want me to, and I could not do it because it was the right thing to do. And caregiving is, it's as good as what you do and what you don't do all at the same time.
Mhm.
And it was very traumatic for me. So when she was coming, I told my husband, he asked me twice before I actually said something. And the second time he took me out to eat and he gave me a drink. And I was like, okay, so I moved it all to the side. I said, just tell me what it is, because I can't. And he said, can we please bring mom down so she can live here? Because I said, yes, I know. Um, Abuse is not just what you do, but it's what you don't do. And I kind of saw her deteriorating, and she wasn't getting the best care because it was one girl and six boys. So when the one girl passed away, they were lost. They didn't know what to do. So I told him, I looked at him first, and I had to take a couple of deep breaths because the other part of me was like, absolutely not. But the other side was like, this woman has literally buried five of her seven children and a husband,
Oh,
and she
wow.
is still smiling. She is still able to just be nice and kind and sweet. And she was all of those things. And I told him, I don't want to do it, but I will do it because it's the right thing to do. I said, however, under one condition, and the condition is, if I come to you and say, I am tired, I need a break, You must give it to me. And my break is going, I'm leaving the house. Like I'm going on a trip. I'm going to my girlfriend's house, who's like a 2.5 hour drive, and she lives in the country. And I said, I have to go. And you cannot, if you say no, then that's a deal breaker. So those are my boundaries. I mean, that's the boundary right there. And to this day, he has held true to that. And it's 6 years later. So that was
Mm-hmm.
huge. But it kind of forced me to do that. I was thinking about it was not the traditional sense, but I knew I had to put something in play because I just had just about that much left before I was going to lose my total mind. And it turned out to be the best thing for her. I mean, she was so thin and just scrawny when she got here. Of course, we beefed her up. And at that time, she was still moving around and coming up and down the stairs and doing all kind of stuff. And I like to see her thrive and things like that. And now she is, if the Lord says the same, she'll be 98 in March. And she is
Wow.
not sick. She literally takes 2 dementia medicines. That's it. And I give her a multivitamin and I give her some Prilosec because she has, her acid reflux. I take more medicine than that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she is cognitive. She said, "What you got to eat down there? Did you cook?" I said, "No, ma'am, I didn't cook." "So what you got?" I was like, "I'll get you something." She said, "Okay. And can you bring me some coffee?" I said, "Coffee?" She's like, "Yeah, coffee." I said, "Coffee, mama?" "Yes." She calls it
Okay.
coffee.
Okay. I've got a new
I
way
said,
of
"Oh,
saying
okay,
it.
I'll bring you some coffee." But I mean, we have very fluid conversations and things like that. It's not all
Yeah.
great because over the last 6 to 8 months, her mobility has greatly reduced. So we do have hospice coming in to help. So I have an aide that comes in every day, Monday through Friday, to give her a bath. And when she does that, I go downstairs and I literally put on something funny on TV and I just take me a break. I take me a break
Good.
and I know
Good for
what's
you.
going to happen. She's going to go to sleep after her bath. So that means I get another hour and a half at least. But it has been honestly the most rewarding, compassionate thing that I've ever done. Some days are good, some days are not so good. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I've done it. But those boundaries, I still put them in place. Like today, my husband, he's a school teacher and they had Saturday school where students come in. And when he called, I was like, he's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Mom is being just a little combative and she keeps calling me. So I'm running up and down the stairs." He said, "Okay, I'm leaving here in 5 minutes and I'll give you a break." I said, "Okay." And he walked in the door. He said, here's some lunch. Go and sit down. I got it.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
And I sat
I
down.
wanted to
I
ask
didn't
you,
say,
I
yeah,
bet
I
you
didn't
didn't. You
say,
didn't
"Okay, I
hurt
got
him.
it." I sat down.
Right.
And and he went
That's
upstairs and
so
took care
good.
of mom.
You just segued into the next question that I had. But before I ask that question, how many years have you been doing this?
6. She moved early part of 21.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. And this is
And
26.
at what point did you feel like you had it down, that like you were in your groove? It wasn't offensive, it wasn't hurtful, you didn't feel neglected. At what point in that time frame did you feel like I've got this?
Probably the first 4 years because she was still very active. I would take her in the backyard. We would sit out and do things. And it was not as physically intensive. It requires me to actually do other things now. But when she was able to move and we would put her in the car and go for a ride and she could walk, things were a lot different.
Okay.
Things have changed. But because I was able to actually see the progression myself, as opposed to somebody telling me, I understood it. And I understand she's from Mississippi back in the day,
Yeah.
day, day. So
I
they
know a
don't
little
do
bit
well.
about
They don't
that.
do
So,
well with people helping them. They want to do
right.
everything themselves. And I let
Right.
her, and I had to tell my husband, stop doing stuff for her. Because if you do it, then she won't try to do it. The longer she does it, then she will maintain, the ability to do so. So I had to stop him. I mean, he was like cutting up her meat and doing all this and feeding. I was like, what are you doing? It's not a baby.
Um, so the segue that you gave me, was I love when you said that when he gave you the lunch and he told you, just go and whatever. Like I think your exact words were, and I took the help. I took the help. So I want to lean into that for a second with Katie and ask, why is it? And I I'm sure I have an answer or two, but I don't want my answer. Why is it that caregivers feel selfish for needing support? When do they shift from I should be able to handle this to I need a sustainable system, I need a support system? What is that?
we we develop a guilt loop cycle, right? Where we spending time taking care of yourself feels selfish, less important than taking care of somebody else. And you feel bad doing things for yourself that benefit you, and you don't listen to your own needs. And then you get stuck in this loop, this pattern of putting others first over and over again. And you get out of it and prevent burnout and guilt by doing exactly what Cynthia was talking about, right? You set boundaries, you demand respites by having others come in and provide you the support and the help that you need. You delegate to other people activities. You go to counseling and you go to support groups. These are the things that you need to do to prevent this burnout and this guilt loop. But once you get stuck in that guilt loop, it's very difficult to get out of it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure I know. And my sister has a saying that she this is how she spoke to me when this was all happening for me, as she said, even on an airplane, they tell you that if the airplane should go down and you have someone that is dependent on you, that you have to get your oxygen first, and then you can take care of them. And that resonated with me because you're right. A lot of times, especially I'm a Christian, you think to yourself, well, I'm supposed to be self-sacrificing. I'm supposed to put others before me. I'm supposed to steward those that are in need. And so there's I think in terms of our faith and Christianity, it can also cause some conflict in your heart and mind and soul, you know, combating the three together because, your mind is telling you, I need help. I'm not doing well with this,
you
Your
know,
heart, your heart is hurting because whatever their illness is or condition is probably also, you know, burdensome to watch and to care for. But then your soul, if you're looking at the dynamics of Christianity, you're also saying, but they need this. I owe it to God to be that person for them. I owe it. If I'm able, I should give, I should sacrifice. And I think for a lot of people that might be where the guilt loop comes from. It certainly was for me. So that.
to kind of add on to that, just an interesting fact: 60% of caregivers actually go to this burnout phase, right? And the majority of those burnout phase individuals are women. And I'm wondering how much of that has to do with motherhood, right? Our caregiving nature.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm sure it has a lot to do. You're right. Our nature has been we took care of our kids. I think that's clear.
Yeah.
So I wanna go into what can we do about it. I think we've explained kind of personalities that or the persona of a caregiver, and I certainly think that we've explained what burnout looks like, and at least in the terms of the time that we have available today. So what can we do? There's someone out here that's watching this that's like, I'm there. I'm that person. I've got the persona. I'm in these shoes caregiving and I'm burned out. What can we do to reduce burnout and help these people to understand? And I know boundaries is one, which Cynthia so beautifully, illustrated with her own, doing that. What else can we do to reduce burnout?
I go back to just the support piece of it, right? Asking family members for help, for breaks, whether it's, excuse me, whether it's a few hours or a few days, you know, um, going to support groups. There's plenty of support groups, even online support groups for caregivers, where you can sit for an hour and at least feel part of a community of people who understand what you're going through. Going to individual counseling for the support and learning coping skills and dealing with the anxiety as well as the depression that goes along. Getting in-home care if necessary, if affordable and necessary, so you can do other things as well. And if you're lucky enough to have family members that are also willing to come over, delegating different responsibilities to them.
Yeah. It,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add, Cynthia?
Yes. So I agree with all of that. But the one thing I also had to come to terms with is I call it it's not a family affair syndrome, meaning
Okay.
the whole family is not helping. You're it. You are it. So you have to change your expectations on other people. You know, hey, I was just in the area stopping by. Let me go upstairs and take care of grandma or take care of her for, let me just sit with her. Do you want me to pick up something for her to eat? Does she need a shower? Does she need a bath? It's not a family affair. You're it. So once
Yeah.
I stopped expecting for other family to help, it helped me. But while you're expecting, you're just upset. You're like, this is
Yeah.
not even my grandmother. This is no relation to me. And there are able-bodied people like all around me, and nobody's coming to help. I don't
No.
understand. So once you drop those expectations and realize it's not a family affair, you're it,
That's a very
That's
then it
good.
will it will be
That is
very it
good.
will be a lot easier to deal with not being disappointed.
Yeah. Be keeping it real to yourself and stop being in this
Yes.
fantasy land that something's
Yes.
gonna,
Yeah. No.
somebody's gonna magically change their MO, you know.
No, they're not.
Um,
They're not.
so
And
we've
and,
got
and it is what it is.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to see if I can recap what you guys said. So I know Katie said individual therapy, yes to that. A support system if you can. Yes, if you can't, expect that you cannot. It's not a family affair. And then what else did we say? Support, like a support group, an external support group. And you said something else too, Katie. What was the other
External
one?
help, like an
External,
aide
well,
to come in.
external help, right, to come
Mhm.
into the house. And then, of course, Cynthia's boundaries, which is so important. And then I'm going to add one more, which is to have build a minimum viable self-care. I'm real into this term minimum viable. It's just the best term ever. But basically, what's on your worst day is going to be non-negotiable for self-care. Coming from the perspective of resilience and wellness, my my angle at it and what helped me, Katie knows this, what helped me was to have at least a minimal amount of care that I will not negotiate on. Example, sleep support, hydration, movement, nutrition, sound therapy, aromatherapy, whatever it is, just peace and quiet for 20 minutes a day, whatever that is, have a minimum viable self-care um, that you have. Maybe on a really good day, if someone were to come over, maybe you're going to rush off to, the spa or whatever, but you can't do that every day. What is it that you can do every day regardless? And that is, you should call it your minimum viable self-care, you know, non-negotiables. Yep. So I think we have a good list, right? We've got a good list for anyone that is finding themselves feeling like they're either burning out or they're burnout, or they see it coming. This is a good list that I hope you use. And the last question, I think it's my last question. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing to that? Gee,
Yes,
before you go, can I
please.
add one more thing?
Uh-huh.
That is a great list. But what I have found that helped me to have that time is I have to get out the house. You know, I get housetosis really quickly when you're just in the house all the time. And even if nobody else is here, I will go upstairs, make sure the rails are up on my mother-in-law's bed so she can't get out, she can't do anything, and I can see her. I have on my phone, a camera. So if I can't get to the gym, then I'm still going to go outside and I'm going to walk, jog, whatever for the same time. I'm looking right at her. So I know she's asleep. You know, I know she's looking at TV. I know she hasn't gone anywhere. And I do that. And to help me continue to do that, I set a goal for myself. So I set a goal this year of running a 5K. So in order to do that,
Okay.
I have to stay in shape. I have to do this, right? So in order to meet my personal goal, I have to have boundaries around my caregiving goal so that I will not fall out
Yeah.
of that. So that's what I do. I
Which,
set that goal for myself.
yeah, that
So
which kind of is your that would be your minimum viable. This is your
yes,
non-negotiable. You're going to
right.
do that, and it also ties in with what we were talking about before, which is when you first brought that up, is your serenity space.
Yes.
You have to. Everyone deserves it, and
Hmm.
yours is getting out the house or getting to the
Yes.
gym. Mine
Hmm.
is having a space in the house that is got everything I want to see, smell, and hear.
Hmm.
But everyone needs you need a space that you
I
can
agree.
escape to. Yeah, yeah. So I love that. Thank you for adding that and bringing that in there. So if we, burnout's already there. Somebody's already in burnout mode. What do you think is the first reset that we should kind of like a realistic on ramp that people can have? Like, what's the first thing that they should focus on if they are already there in burnout?
I think, well, not from a clinical standpoint, but from my standpoint, I'm sorry, Katie, is to say it out loud. I'm burnt out. I need help. You have to, and that's powerful to me when you say it out loud to yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
some days I say, Cynthia, you're not okay, and it's okay. There's something powerful about giving yourself permission not to be okay. It's the same
Yes.
thing with this. I need help today. That's it. I need help. Say it out loud. Don't keep it inside because nobody can understand that. You know, you're going to get wrinkles in your forehead because you're trying to just say it out loud. It is so empowering. I it is so empowering. Just say it out loud.
Yeah.
That's actually a coping skill that we teach, right? Name the emotion, name what is happening. It takes it out of the emotion part of the brain and it puts it up here where you start to solve the problem, you know?
Right.
Love
Um,
it.
so you name it, you name what's happening to you, and it helps you take control. So that's a great point. Um, you also need to like reclaim physical control through nutrition, hydration, movement, sleep, basic self care,
Mm-hmm.
and mindset.
Yes, you're all over my favorite subjects. Yes.
And my favorite, counseling and self care.
Yes.
So, but really, it is about physical control and rebuilding your sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that through the basic self care, nutrition, hydration, exercise, therapy, mindfulness, sleep, exercise. I think I mentioned exercise a couple times.
Sleep therapy is like one of my favorites. I don't even coach anyone without like trying to have a good understanding of where they're at with their sleep. So, um, I had another like something to just add to this. It could it be that once we do that, let's say we're in the middle of this and we do what you said, Katie and Cynthia, we name it and now we come back to ourselves and we start physically getting our physicality back as far as, focusing on our hydration and nutrition and movement and all of that. Could it be that it also would help the people that we're serving as a caregiver because, and I'm just throwing this out here, I have seen it with one particular person, which was my dad. So this is why I'm throwing it out here, where if they see you doting and neglecting yourself for them, they actually take more advantage of it. And then when they see you become more independent, they become more independent. It happened to me with one person. So I'm just curious, is that a thing or was that like just my goofy father? So
I'm sure it could happen. Absolutely. You know, we mirror people we see, right? Little kids mimic their parents, right? Why wouldn't somebody mimic somebody who's around them? So I don't see why it couldn't happen. Yeah. And they see you taking care of yourself, they're going to maybe say, hey, I can't take advantage of this person. And maybe I should start taking care of myself a little bit too.
yeah, that's pretty much what my dad said. He was like, "Well, I don't want to disturb you because I know you need to do this." But that was like 3 years in of me just literally having no thoughts of a life, you know? And I didn't realize that maybe I should be doing something for me. So, and once I did, actually, it seemed like my father respected it more and kind of tried to do, understand more things he could do for himself, which was very helpful. And he was a very sick man, so that just showed me how mindset really can not just affect the caregiver but the person being cared for too. We both leveled up when that happened. So
That's a
Right.
great example.
Yeah, it is. I have a,
so
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Tia, were you finished?
no, yeah, I'm finished. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I have a real life event that happened this morning during my caregiving. So I was preparing to give my mother-in-law her bath. I give it all in the bed. I've learned watching the watching the aid. I've learned how to do it myself. But I told, she's from Mississippi, and as frail as she is trying to help me. I'm like, okay, Mama, I'm going to give you a bath. So she gets tense. I said, okay, just lay back. But she's trying to help me, right? And I'm trying to get her to lay down because I can't do what I need to do with her moving and doing all this. And I said, Mom, can you just lay down? What? It just hurts a little on my back when I lay flat. I said, okay. So I pulled the thing up a little bit more. And I said, is that better? She said, yes. And then she started just moving. And I just in my own frustration, I said, Mama, just be still. She said, okay. I said, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. And she said, I just don't want, I said, it's not a burden. I said, I enjoy taking care of you. And I
Mm,
just want you to relax more so that I can help you. I said, I love you. And I bent over her and I gave her a hug and a kiss because I realized that I got frustrated just that fast because I'm trying to do this and she's trying to be her independent self, which is good, but there was a conflict. And she took it personal because she said, okay, like,
oh boy.
she was kind of right. And I immediately stopped because I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I just stopped doing what I was doing, took my gloves off, and I just loved on her for a few minutes and reassured her that I am honored to take care of her and that I love her so much and I'll do anything for her. And it's not a burden. And then she's
That's
like, oh,
beautiful.
thank you, honey. Thank you, sweetheart. And she just gave me a big hug and I kissed her and I said, okay, are you ready? She said, yes, I'm ready. I'll just lay back. I said, okay. And I put on some new gloves and I went on. So I think that is extraordinarily important when you are in that situation and you immediately notice that they're noticing your frustration. Stop. Not only
Yeah.
stop, but reassure them that it's not a problem. You just had a
Hmm.
moment where you're trying to do something and they're trying to do something else. Otherwise, they're going to feel like like it's a burden. And it's not. It can be difficult, but it's not burdensome. So that happened real life today. So
Wow.
just listen and look at what they're doing and what they're not saying. And if they say it for sure, pay attention.
That's
That's
wonderful. Hey,
that's
you
an
have,
excellent
you
point.
have a final word for us too?
I was just gonna my own experience with caregiving was very slow, long, and drawn out, and I didn't even realize I was becoming a caregiver. So when I experienced frustration, I it was noticed, and I didn't have that mentality of stop, let them know it's okay. And
Yeah.
it would turn into arguments, and it would turn into nastiness. And I do regret that now, right? There's nothing I can do to change it. I have to accept it. But the final 2 months went into full caregiver mode. Fortunately, the last month I had a lot of help. He was in the hospital. I was able to leave at
Yeah.
night and
Yeah.
get sleep, right? Um,
And I
but
was going to say your relationship was totally different. I mean, it's kind of normal for us to have arguments with our spouses. So on
absolutely,
a regular day.
that was kind of his personality, So I mean, it was totally normal. But over the course of like 3 or 4 years, I didn't even realize I was picking on that persona. Every day it became a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, until by the time he got to the hospital, there was so much resentment towards him,
Mm,
and that's just
real.
something
Yeah.
that you need to be aware of, because you don't want to feel that way when a
Yeah.
person's dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that so honestly. I mean, and it happens. And anyone who says it doesn't is not being honest. It
Sure.
definitely can. And there are even I won't even say can. There are always going to be moments, at least during an extended caregiving. I don't care who the person is, where there's some resentment because you can feel imprisoned by the care. You can actually feel like you're in prison. Like, how did I get here? I'm trapped. I want to do this. They're basically the care is sucking all the air out of anything I could think of. And this is all I am. This is this caring. And so even when you love someone to death, and there's nothing you wouldn't do for them. It is near impossible to not ever have moments like that where you at
Hmm.
some point feel like all I am is this caregiving.
Absolutely.
Right.
So thank you guys. You're so honest, and thank you for bringing so much wisdom, both of you, and compassion to this topic. I know this is going to help people that do see this, and to every caregiver watching, if you've ever been, just feeling tired or numb or irritable or like you're running on fumes, or that you're alone. It's not weakness. That is literally your system asking for care too. So my hope is that today helped you separate compassion from overload, so that you can keep loving people without disappearing in the process, losing yourself, being physically ill, emotionally ill. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe for more conversations on caregiving and high stress seasons. And we're going to be discussing emotional regulation and sustainable routines in life. And just feel free to share this episode too with a friend who needs it. But thank you guys. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. I'm Chi. This is Chatting with Chi, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Thank you all.